My father lost his arm when he was young. I tried many times to ask the cause, but it was not until now that my father told me about that thrilling story. At that time, my father had just married my mother not long ago and lived in a high mountain surrounded by only wild animals and plants. To make a living, my father had to go to the mountains to hunt wild animals. Once my father went to the mountains to hunt animals in a snow-covered sky. In the distance he saw a wild rabbit. Waiting until this rabbit didn't notice, my father opened fire. The bullet went through the poor rabbit's abdomen, causing it to fall on the spot, stiffening its whole body. The rabbit then tried to roll a few more laps in the snow and then collapsed. My father saw it all from afar. He hid behind a large tree nearby and then slowly walked out to check the animal's condition. My father tried to make his way through the line of thick white snow straight to the rabbit's direction. His eyes did not forget to look around to watch out for wild animals. When my father was only a few meters away from the hare, he heard footsteps and animal sounds in the distance. My father realized that this was the sound of a small animal's footsteps. So he suddenly looked up. Accidentally, he saw a cave. Inside it was covered with several layers of straw and dry leaves. My dad guessed it was the cave of the rabbit he shot down. In his heart, then rose a feeling of guilt and awkwardness. Suddenly next to him came the sound of wild animals. My father looked up and saw a group of white foxes coming out of nowhere standing around the carcass of the little rabbit. My father scratched his head and thought to himself, this group of white foxes must have been in the forest for a long time and had no food, but now they could smell wild game meat, so they pulled the whole group out like that. So my father decided to give this rabbit to the foxes, and he went to another place to continue hunting. This time, he decided to go deeper into the forest. He hoped to catch more rabbits or some other big animal for my mother to make dinner. My father's gunshot rang out continuously, but there was only one more hare. My father thought that one rabbit would be enough, so when he saw the rabbit lying motionless, he slowly went out to check. He had only taken a few steps when suddenly, my father heard a loud noise and a cold breath appeared from behind him. The footsteps of wild animals also sounded from there, but they were getting closer and closer to my father. My father, out of curiosity, quietly went to the place where the noise was coming from. He hoped to find another animal for himself. But when he arrived, in front of him suddenly appeared a grizzly bear, a head taller than him, busy looking for food. As soon as it saw my father, the grizzly bear determined that this would be his prey, so it rushed forward, its eyes also starting to turn red in anger. The bear rushed through the trees and grabbed my father. Then it opened its big mouth and bit my father's hand hard. My father screamed in pain. He was overwhelmed by the weight and the huge body of this bear crushed on the ground. He was unable to resist. It attacked my father so fast that he could not fire a gun to fight back. The wound also began to appear intense pain. My father writhed on the ground, one hand clutching the bleeding wound. At this point, my father seemed to have completely collapsed and lost all hope. The bear saw my father screaming. It thought that my father was threatening it, so the anger in its heart also increased because of that. It roared loudly, shouting straight at my father's face as if it wanted to eat him alive in one shot. My father was too scared, plus the freezing cold of the winter mountains leading to a loss of strength and slowly fainting. He seemed to have no more faith anymore, so he closed his eyes and surrendered his fate to God to decide. His whole body was no longer able to move and was as cold as an iceberg. It took a long time for my father to regain his sanity. He was like a man who fell asleep in the forest. He woke up and opened his eyes to see. He realized he was still lying in the forest on the white snow, but the big bear had disappeared. He started to get up, making his way home. The wound on his head also continued to ache, even though the blood had been frozen by the snow. He looked around for his direction, but the snow was so heavy that it blocked his path. Suddenly a shadow appeared in front of him. This strange figure slowly approached my father. He recognized it as a young girl with a mysterious appearance. He knew that it was a strange thing for a young girl to appear in the forest, but because he had no other hope, he took a risk and chased after the girl. Suddenly she turned around, looked at my father with eyes as bright as a fox's eye, and coldly told my father to follow her. My father was bewildered and did not understand anything, but his mind was now hypnotized, only following this girl unconsciously. The girl kept walking straight ahead through the blizzard as if nothing had happened, leaving my father to remain puzzled. When my father felt that he couldn't keep going straight ahead anymore, he called the girl over to ask, but my father just opened his mouth when the whole person fell into a state of loss of feeling. My father no longer remembered anything after that, only remembering that time his mind was spinning blank, walking behind the girl even though he did not know who this girl was. The strange girl continued to lead my father in a straight line. They went through the dry, snowy trees, little by little out of the murky, dangerous forest. Then this girl took my father to a cliff. Since then my father had never crossed this road, but as long as he followed the girl, he could cross this cliff very easily. At the same time, at home, my mother saw that the snow was falling more and more densely, but my father hadn't returned. One insecurity also began to appear in her heart, so she decided to risk going alone into the forest to find my father. My mother quickly put on her shirt and went out nervously. But when my mother came out, she suddenly saw that my father had returned to the front of the house in a lifeless form. My father's whole body was cold to blue and purple all over his body. He could only stand motionless and couldn't do anything else. My mother saw this, panicked, and rushed to hug my father, feeling the cold that turned his body into a giant iceberg. After my mother touched his body, he immediately fainted. My mother was scared, struggling and confused, not knowing what to do, nor understanding what had happened. My mother called for a long time but did not see my father answer. He was still seriously injured, causing him to panic. My mother tried to help my father, but she was pulled by the weight of my father's frozen body to the ground. My mother tried to call and shake him, but my father still couldn't wake up. But at the same time, my mother accidentally looked outside the gate to see which benefactor had brought him home, and saw a strange thing. In the snow, falling more and more, my mother saw the faint shadows of a flock of small foxes. They stood far enough away from my house and refused to come any closer. My mother also gradually understood the problem, so she brought my father inside. After seeing that their father had reached home safely, the foxes also quietly returned to the deep forest and disappeared. The most impressive of my mother in the story was the fox in the middle, with bright blue eyes and white fur that blends in with the snow, constantly watching the house. The doctor then also came to check on my father's condition. Fortunately, he still managed to save his life, but the wound on his hand was severely necrotic and had to be amputated. Both my father and mother were heartbroken over that. That was why my father stopped hunting, but he still didn't forget his strange story in his heart. Not only that, but he also considered it to be the other fox elf that turned into a human to help him find his way home. After that, my father tried to return to the forest to find the foxes many times, but he had never seen them ever again.